I have the great privilege to speak with Mario Holzner today, the director of the Vienna Institute for International Economic Studies. And you and your team has presented in July 2018 in Vienna a research, a result of a research and a very concrete plan, actually, and a program of a so-called, as you called it, European Silk Road. And when I discovered your article recently at the FAZ, I was really very excited, because in the current environment and the current discussion, broader or geopolitical discussion on the many new Silk Roads of Peter Frankopan, or the idea of the Chinese idea of the new Silk Road, and then you came up with a European Silk Road, and yeah, so I was really excited to know more about it, and I wrote down a few questions, and one is like, how would you describe the key qualities of this European Silk Road, or maybe even European New Silk Road, as you have proposed it?
Yes. Well, thanks a lot for all these questions. I think the basic idea behind it was that Europe lacks a bit of a narrative of a common project. A lot of negative news about European unity and integration, little positive prospects, and also given the lack of investment since basically the outbreak of the global financial crisis, and at the same time interest rates which are at the zero lower bound, the question really arises, why don't we actually invest into something that is important for our continent, that has the potential on the one hand to increase productivity, to maybe industrialize large sectors, especially in the poorer areas in the east of our continent. In the end, to connect people, to, as I said, give a positive narrative for this continent. So that was basically the idea, and then we came up also a colleague, Mr. Lehner from our board, came with an idea to, well, let's suggest something. Let's suggest, for instance, something that we can learn from China with their Belt and Road Initiative. Well, maybe Europe could do something like that as well. And let's suggest a big infrastructure project. We tried to have two routes of this, one northern, one southern, connecting basically the main industrial core zones of Western Europe with those also very populated but much poorer regions in the east of Europe, all the way to Europe's borders, so to speak, like the Russian-Kazakh border in the Caucasus. So really a big connection east-west. And yeah, the plan was then to to some detail explain what this infrastructure could look like, what it would cost, what the direct economic effects would be, what the trade effects be, and employment effects, and so we produced this report basically on basically called A European Silk Road.
Mm-hmm. And how would you describe the key qualities of this European Silk Road, like according to your report? Like when it's in a direct comparison with the systemic approach and the other ideas of a Silk Road. How did you separate the quality and the conditions, the key conditions which set your idea apart?
Well, I think we were quite pragmatic. We thought of of a connection that is made up of, on the one hand, well, it's a completely new infrastructure. So we're not talking about upgrading something existent or so, but would be a parallel new infrastructure of a high-speed rail network, basically, combined with a modern highway system that would also allow to set, for instance, standards in e-mobility, in autonomous driving. This could be then common European standards, which could be also relevant for the whole world. So I think there are many opportunities in this respect. And then along these two routes, the idea was also to have a number of inland water ports, of sea harbors, of air terminals, of various logistical hubs. Obviously, we are an economics institute, so we had in mind a lot of economically relevant qualities that such a big infrastructure should have.
Mm. I think, I mean, these are very straight and very tough questions, of course, in the sense it needs a very detailed analysis, and it's always very, both on a macro and on a micro level, it needs a very specific analysis. But I find it very fascinating to hear that you say that it's a very positive concept, a positive alternative, a very positive answer and respond to the Chinese or other ideas. Yeah. And how would you from this this new element? I mean, when we speak about the new Silk Road or a European Silk Road, the question of what is also historically really in economic terms or even maybe in cultural terms, the new element. What is that for you? Like, what motivated you to say this is something really new also for Europe?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, we have already in the European Union initiatives like the TENS and so on, but these exist since the 90s, and it's not like nothing happened, but there is no big push in a way. It's piecemeal, and it was so far also seen from a very technical point of view, I think, and I think there is more than that, and I think such a huge project, we estimated costs of about 1,000 billion euros, which is about 7% of the EU's GDP or 8% of the GDP of the countries along these routes. That would also help, for instance, it would make it necessary for all the countries to cooperate on this. I think we need more cooperation in Europe, definitely. And it's not only about the European Union, it's about the wider concept of Europe, of our neighbors in the East. Might never become members of the European Union, but nevertheless, we should engage in cooperation and in common projects. I think that would be a good way to go. And also, I think it's important to say that this is not to be seen as something against China or so. This could actually be complementary. It's a European initiative. And the question is, China, for instance, since the outbreak of the global financial crisis, I think, if I'm correct, has been building 30,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. And we have been doing nothing, basically. We had austerity and internal fightings, Brexit and what have you, and no progress, no common plan. I think that's something where also even such a big sum, which although if you split it up along the investment horizon, it would not be such a big sum at all for Europe as a whole. But I think one could explain it to the European taxpayers, or that makes sense, and that is something that would benefit all of us.
Yeah, I can just speak for myself. Like when I read the question, like why not a European Silk Road, I thought like really that this is really like well done, because it's, I believe it starts really with the right questions, and I mean, when it comes to this strategic goal, to create, for example, a period of peace and stability in this part of the world and in this geographic zone along the Silk Road, what do you think? Why should decision makers along the Silk Road trust the European Silk Road?
I mean, trust can be only earned by certain actions. If you start to connect yourself with others, then I think that will be seen as something positive. And if one would try to together define the standards of this technical construction and all the additional elements that are there, that would be also a way to actually learn cooperation on a specific project. I mean, this won't solve all the big problems in the world, that is clear, but it would be a manageable element that could actually maybe increase trust and also support cooperation in other fields.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, what I hear listening to you is, I mean, you are a European with Austrian background, and I mean, you also with your institute, you're permanently, constantly searching for solutions and ideas how to improve the current state, and how to activate and mobilize positive qualities like trust and like cooperation and like a real open vizier, an open approach, but with a certain standard, with a certain value orientation, and with a certain idea of quality. Another question I wrote down is if we are thinking of this global context and this specific zone of the Silk Road, and if we are thinking of the people in this zone, what kind of story or narrative would you tell these potential cooperation partners you mentioned of the European Silk Road? Like the story of the European Silk Road, what would that be in your report?
Well, I mean, this wider region of Europe, east of the European Union, it's about as many people, about 500 million living in that part of Europe and the adjacent areas like in Turkey, Iran, Central Asia. So we are talking about another time Western Europe. East. So it's really the eastern part of it, and but the income levels are low, and it should be in the interest also of Western Europe that these people earn more, consume our goods, that they can also produce goods and so on, that we interact also in economic terms, and that will bring also interaction in cultural terms and tourism and what have you. So this is not a zero-sum game. Everyone would gain from that. Yeah. Maybe there would be differences on a regional level. That is true. I mean, those would gain, particularly that are on the very close to the routes, and those who are further away might actually lose in relative terms. But the cake, so to speak, would be larger for everyone. And I think that is, from an economic point of view, an argument which should be taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm. And one other hard question, like in the context of this big discussion between Europe and an idea of a European Silk Road and the new Silk Road of the Chinese government, how would you say, or what you believe is, what can Europe better than other stakeholders or political systems sitting on the global table. If we imagine a global table and all these stakeholders, they proposing their idea of a Silk Road, what is our real strength as Europeans, or as a European Silk Road?
Well, I think we have, with the European Union, we have a construction of an institution that has learned to find compromises, to organize complex multinational projects. That is something that we are really in Europe experts for that, and how to blend maybe different financing schemes, how to develop common standards. I think these organizational questions, I think we are really good in, and also given that Europe is home to some of the world's highest technological leaders in manufacturing industry, is a big advantage also with regard to infrastructure construction. And so, I mean, there are a number of reasons why actually we should do quite a good job in something like that, if the political will would be there, which is obviously the most important issue.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to business and economics, in the very narrow sense, and also in the widest sense, we also speak about the idea of pragmatism, right? I mean, the very concrete realization of certain ideas, but very concrete approaches you just mentioned on an institutional level, and just the approach, how things could be done. How does the European idea of pragmatism, as expressed in your report, and in the idea of the European Silk Road, differ from, for example, the current American or Russian or Chinese concept of pragmatism? How would you describe that?
Well, I don't know whether there is really a European concept of pragmatism. Everything is very complicated because we are a bunch of many small countries with different languages and very proud people, and we don't have, like China, one party that rules a huge country, which is, I think, also good for Europe. It is different from that concept. Mm-hmm. But that brings obviously also makes it more complicated. Yeah. But as I said before, I think we have the institutions which might need to be developed further, but we have some starting point where we can work from, and then it won't work like in China, where you have really in the end not a democratic government, but one that does not need to look at election cycles, but that really can develop 30-year plans, basically, or even longer. And there's really a long view on policy, and this is obviously something that in a democracy lacks a bit. Politicians are looking at the next 4 years or 5 years, and which is understandable, but we need also a few projects that go beyond. And I think, for instance, with the high-speed rail, we could also reduce the use of airplanes and kerosene, and related to the CO2 question. And I mean, a whole lot of things can be packed into such a modern infrastructure thing, and it could be connected with also electricity transfer and so on. I mean, one could add things, and then what we did was just a suggestion. Any other things could be done in addition to that.
I mean, I believe like one part of the European idea is that two very different people like you and me, we can have a very substantial discussion from very different point of views. I mean, I'm a conductor, I'm a musician, and I'm proposing an idea for for this region of the world, but also on a personal level, the Silk Road Cultural Belt, and with Callias Foundation and a wonderful orchestra, the Silk Road Symphony Orchestra behind, in realizing this idea. I would be very eager to know, like, when we speak about a European Silk Road, and what you just said, that Europe is different from this system, from other systems in the world. Which role could and should play culture and classical music or music in this idea, in your perception?
Well, I mean, obviously, as economists, this is not our business, so to speak. Unfortunately, probably, but I'm not sure whether there are some theories how to connect classical music with economic theory. I would be obviously very much in favor if the physical connection of people would also lead to their cultural connection, which I'm pretty sure of. I mean, if you have really a high-speed rail I mean, it must not even be faster than what high-speed rail can do today with today's technology, although I'm sure one could even increase that. But you know, if you could then just enter a train and just in the evening there is something in Paris in the opera or somewhere else, and then you know it's maybe much less complicated than go to the airport and you know and especially I think in distances of, let's say, 600, 700 kilometers, that could then make really feasible for people to commute also and to consume also not only goods and services in a commercial sense, but also cultural events.
And what needs to happen to make your idea and plan of a European Silk Road a common European project? I mean, now it's really like, it was your report, it was presented in Vienna and now in the FAZ. And I mean, the democratic system is really, it's difficult for this kind of questions, because there is a big discussion and there is participation, there is regional, national, international, negotiation processes, let's call it like this. What needs to be done? What needs to happen? I mean, your idea is there, the report is there, and...
Yeah, I mean, what we are doing is to do various dissemination events, not only in Austria, but also we plan for Germany and for Brussels, and we will probably this year we will still have a follow-up paper that will look into more detail, maybe also the financing of the whole thing, maybe some industrial effects. We still have to see what makes most sense. And yeah, it's about convincing people, politicians, people in the European Commission. Obviously, if the next European Commission would take up this project as something that at least could be discussed, also, you know, that would be already very important for this to fly. But I mean, I have no illusions. This is obviously not going to look like exactly what we suggested. But if it is something, a little push, not a big one, but in this case, a little push in the right direction, and the people actually start to discuss it. And I think there is something like a zeitgeist probably, and people start already to discuss, you know, especially in Germany also, this whole discussion about the Schuldenbremse and the rotten highway infrastructure and bridges, and I don't know what. That's already, I mean, these are all bits and parts of the same larger discussion, I think, and especially in a period where we have zero or even negative real interest rates, where the state, the public would get paid to take up money. You know, I mean, it is almost, it's incredible that the politicians would not want to actually invest in very useful infrastructure because large parts of Europe have been neglecting infrastructure for almost decades now. And, so there is a potential for improvement. It is something that is good for the future of this continent. So the financing realistically is not really a problem. And so why not doing it? Yeah, that's probably a question of the mindset of a critical mass of people who think this would be a good idea.
No, that's one of the reasons why I was really excited. I'm grateful for your initiative, because the discussion has been dominated so strongly by not European or non-European players, and it's great to see that there is some confidence and some real trust in you and in your team and in the larger network behind, to see that Europe has the capacity to mobilize a positive, really a positive outlook out even beyond its borders, because otherwise this creative potential, I mean, it's the European genius, I believe, really needs a strong task, a strong idea to serve with its creative potential. And I mean, you just said that it needs a lot of conviction, and it needs certain people to convince. Are there any like specific, for example, political stakeholders which need to be convinced? When you think about Europe, who could be interested in really like making this idea part of a strategic plan?
Well, I could imagine that the leadership of the next commission might be interested. That would be someone we don't know yet who that will be. Whom to address would be probably quite important. I mean, we are speaking about those who can speak for a large number of countries, and these can also be intellectuals. I mean, I think, as I said before, we are not targeting certain persons now, but I think it's about the critical mass of people who are interested in Europe, who want this peace project to really be a success, also in the long run, not in the past, but that this project has also a future. And I think all of those people should think about this proposal and discussion. And I think we can contribute and try to write maybe a newspaper article here, organize an event there. These are small steps, but every bigger plan has started at a certain point. There's some colorful lines on the map or something. It can be laughed at. Because it's a utopia. It's a vision, but
exactly.
Some visions are being also realized. And the question is whether the good visions are being realized or the bad visions. So there is an economic concept of equilibria, and some economic theory thinks there is only one equilibrium. That's the one that you are in. But there are also economic theories that believe, well, there are different equilibria. There are better ones and there are worse ones. And it is about economic policy that helps you to achieve the better equilibrium. And otherwise you will be stuck in a bad equilibrium. So, if you believe that the world can be improved, and nothing is just given from heaven, and I think it is worthwhile to study possibilities to improve the world.
One last question. In the context of democracy and democratization of ideas, like an idea like the Silk Road, the new Silk Road, as Peter Frankopan has discussed it with the concept of many new Silk Roads. And this democratization also in the context of judgmental superiority, of like this, in German, the Deutungshoheit about an idea like the Silk Road. In my perception, are facing us with the question how we can involve as many people as possible in the search for the best ideas and practical examples of a practical development of certain ideas, like a European Silk Road. Question: how could the European idea of a European Silk Road involve the creative potential of stakeholders, people, for example, living in countries along the Silk Road? Have you included this part of the people-to-people question, bottom-up question, civil society, but even on a personal and individual level, democratization of personal perception?
Well, I mean, it is. Everyone is free to engage in discussions. I think everyone should do that, but we can't force people to discuss things, to develop plans. So, I mean, in that sense, I don't think neither you nor me we will be able to force people to think about this. But we can just contribute our small piece, one brick into the building of that road, and yeah, engage with other people, talk to them in conferences, in the media, in various forms. And, I think in the end, given that this is a really big project and involves also a lot of technical specifications and so on, I'm not so sure how much the civil society can be engaged. Certainly, I think already now the European Commission tries to actually involve, maybe ex post at least, but also partly in the process, people from non-governmental organizations, which is, I think, a good idea. And obviously, one could do that also in the planning of such an infrastructure project. But there we are already in some details of the organizational structure, which I think the first things first. So the first thing is we have to convince a lot of people about this.
No, I mean, from listening to you, I think the confidence in the position of listening actually to all the possible ideas and points of view in a larger discussion is actually the one of the strengths of the European position. Not to force, not to, in a sense, colonialize, not to impose a position which is very fragile, which is very complex, which is very rich in its complexity, as the European discussion is. With, as you in the beginning said, very proud, every national culture in Europe. With the cultural heritage, there are very strong discussion partners, but still there is some also now expressed by you is that there is some confidence that after the experience, maybe if I understand you right, after the experience of 2 world wars and in the context of the peace project, Europe can propose a position which is not imposing an idea of a new Silk Road, but is inviting for a discussion and to develop solutions together. And if I understood you right, I mean, this is what I find very positive. And yeah, maybe you have some final words you would like to say to share.
Yeah, well, you're right. There's nothing should be imposed on others. It should be a cooperative work. And I mean, in our proposal, we suggested also that one could first start with the core rules, and if it's not possible to immediately convince everyone, I mean, it is in the end an old European tradition, and especially also of the EU, that you have some countries who cooperate more and others who do less, but who anyway can join later on if they want, And I think in that spirit we should also continue if we talk about large infrastructure. It would be obviously best if everyone would cooperate at the same time, but realistically it might happen that maybe some countries start with it and so on, and that there is obviously a legacy and so on, but yeah, let the doors open for others to join. And I think that could be a guiding principle also for this European Silk Road. Great,
thank you very much. Really, I wish you all the very best and much of success. And I, of course, will be glad if classical music and a piece of silk, as we call it, can be some motivation and some active element in this discussion. And thank you very much for your precious time, and all the best.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure classical music would certainly help this endeavor and this project. Thank you.